Something every Disney fan has been waiting for has just happened as Disney just recently relaunched character meet and greets at the Disney parks. It'll be a little bit different from how you remember it before COVID, but obviously a lot of people are excited to have it back. Here to talk about the return of character meet and greets is one of my good friends and former Disney character performer, Robert Kirchoff, joining us in a new series called Confessions of an Ex-Disney Cast Member. Before we go on, I'd like to drop my little disclaimer and say neither me or Robert speak for the Walt Disney brand or the Walt Disney Company. Also, further full disclosure, Robert and I worked together in Celebration very briefly before he ran away from me and made the swap over to entertainment. Robert, thanks again for coming on. I was going to ask you, what's it like coming into entertainment from working other areas in Disney? Is it a hard transition?
I think, I think it was actually an easier transition because navigating any type of new role, new job, regardless Disney or not Disney, is so challenging. There's so much other stuff you're learning about the company, the culture. So it's kind of nice to already have a couple years of Disney behind me. Additionally, too, I will say, being a captain and working alongside all these performers, entertainment has a pretty nasty stigma around the other lines of business at Disney. Some of it I think is well earned on entertainment's end. Like you can't be mean to people just because you put on a costume. You're not better. But you learn pretty quickly that a lot of the performers, and this is a generalization, not always true, but a lot of the performers that came from other parts of Disney first were more humble and just better workers because full disclosure, in my opinion, I think entertainment is by far the easiest line of business at Disney. Compared to food and beverage, my other frontline role, entertainment was a walk in the park. Everyone's excited to meet you. Everyone wants to hug you. As a performer, as an attendant, I think you have it pretty rough and they work really hard. But as a performer, everyone's excited to meet you. Everyone wants to hug you. Everyone wants your autograph. Whereas food and beverage, telling someone, hey, your order is going to take 10 more minutes. Everyone doesn't love you there. So coming from other Disney lines of business, it prepared me and maybe a lot more, I think, humble and more grateful for the role that I had.
Awesome. And then I was going to say, first off, before, since we both worked for Disney, we're obviously still going to defend character integrity here. So I'm going to use terms during this interview where I'll say there's only one Mickey Mouse, only one Donald Duck. You never are these characters, but you'll hear people use the terms like I'm friends with that character, which is what we'll stick through for this interview and discussing performing. Was it hard for you with people outside of Disney trying to get you to break character, asking you okay, how many Goofies are there really?
Yeah, that definitely comes up. When you're performing, you don't really get it too much. I think the attendants would. And when I was a captain, sometimes I'd fill in as an attendant and they would try to I think it's mostly parents. They just want to be cool. They're like, oh, so I saw them here and now they're here. How'd that happen? And everyone comes up with their own things. But one of my favorite stories was I was training as a captain and I was at the Contemporary Resort where Mickey, Donald, Goofy, Pluto, and Minnie all meet. And a man came up to me and was like, so he was like, Goofy's here, but it also says that Goofy's meeting at Studios and he's meeting at Magic Kingdom and Epcot. How is that possible? And I was like, well, sir, I actually drive Goofy around in this van and we take back roads so we can go 70 miles per hour. And we just pop up here, we pop up there. We just see as many people as possible. And he was just like, oh my God, that's how it works. And just walked away. So it really doesn't happen too often. I will say most people are there because they want to believe in, the quote unquote Disney magic, but you had a couple of people and even when I would be performing as characters, they would try, they'd always be like, is it hot in there? Is there a fan? Is there this? And you're just like, please go. Here's your hug. Please go away.
Oh, I love that. Let's get a little bit into your personal history as a character performer. Who were the most common characters that you were friends with?
Yeah, so anyone really tall is where I spent most of my time with. Woody, Frozone, the Beast, Mr. Incredible, Green Army Man. I did all of them a decent amount, Goofy, but I spent honestly the majority of my time with Chewbacca, which is great because everyone loves Chewbacca. Maybe a little biased, but I think he's the most loved Disney character because dads want to be Han Solo with you. Moms are just oh my God, it's a tall man. And just oh my God, Chewbacca. And then like kids just want to like save the galaxy with you. So like it's just I think it's great because I think majority of our characters are geared towards children. Like the princesses are obviously there for like the younger girls and the younger boys who love princesses. And then like just, Disney and Pixar characters are designed for kids. So Chewbacca's just cool because on the other side of it, like he's been around for like 40, 50 years. So he's been around longer than a lot of the characters that meet in the parks. And like I think he's has a little bit of something for everyone. So a little biased.
Yeah,
But I spent
absolutely.
most of my time
I
with him
like
and
that.
I loved it.
I mean, Chewbacca's it's kind of hard
He's
to
great.
top Chewbacca. Like even I feel like when you watch Star Wars, even the actors who are in a scene with Chewbacca like know that he's the coolest person in the room.
And to piggyback off that too, I think in terms of bringing characters to life, I always thought of it this way: like Woody and Buzz are animated characters, like Cinderella, animated character, Mary Poppins, played by an actress, Star Lord, played by an actor, Chewbacca, played by Peter Mayhew in a Wookiee costume. So I feel like meeting Chewbacca is like the closest you get to meeting a character from a movie. Like personal opinion. I always thought it was kind
That
of like
is
that's what
really
I
cool.
always
I
like
like that
try to tell
perspective a
people
lot.
that. Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
like, like Woody and Buzz are like this tall, but then like when you meet them, they're really tall. And like there's obviously, like you're shrunk down to their size kind of thing. But I thought Chewbacca was always just the coolest because I was like, he's so accurate to the movie that he comes to, like or comes from. So like I thought he was cool.
That is really neat. So the whole process before you become a character like
Hmm.
with Disney, that it's going to be like a very long audition process. So kind of walk me through what the audition process is, because for someone from me who came from like another area of
Yeah.
Disney, it's like you just picture this intense, crazy event, and it's kind of overwhelming just imagination. So let's separate the imagination from reality. What is it like auditioning to be a Disney character?
Auditions, they're probably a little bit different now because of COVID and everything that happened. But before that, they used to would have like auditions like every other Thursday. And DisneyAuditions.com, it'll literally tell you what they're looking for. So if they're looking for, some of our princess friends, like they're going to say girls that look like this, and this, or people in this height range. So at Disney, the two most in demand height ranges are always your 6'2" and above, and then your 5 foot and below for your mouse friends and for your tall Star Wars friends. So when I auditioned in January, the month before Disney's launch bay opened that had Vader and Chewbacca there. So tall. And so I had a friend, she was like, you need to go. Like, you're really tall. Like, you'll get it. Cause I don't have a performance background. I think I'm an amazing dancer, but I can't even pony or like do a jazz square. I think I have fun. So I think that counts, but not a technical dancer.
Did you do any of the
So
dance parties as a
yeah, you
performer?
have to learn. I think it's like a 16 count or a 32 count. I don't even know what 32 count thing is a thing, but you have to do like choreography on your top half and your bottom half. I remember like the song was like this Happy Feet song. Really random. But yeah, you do this dancing portion and then they cut people. And so I was like, if I don't make it, if I make it past the dancing portion, I think because then the next portion's animation. I was like, I think I can do okay. And they kept me. And I was like, oh, I'm like, but there's other guys who were better dancers than me, but they were below 6 feet. So every audition, they always have something in mind that they're hiring for. And that audition, they were looking for Chewbacca's and Vader's and anyone who's 6'2" and taller. So I do all that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then you do an animation portion. So like then you just mine was it's I know it's different every time, but mine was like pretend you're an animal in a zoo. So I was like, oh, I'll just be like a monkey because those are the most animated. Because like I know like a friend that I met there was like, I'm gonna be a sloth. So they kind of just like sat there and moved slow, which I think it's cool, but I was like, a monkey, you can pretty much do anything. So I did that, and then they cut more people, and then they line you up and they take your height. And they're like, okay, you're in the character pool. Like you have 6 months to hear from us. And then you just kind of wait until you get a phone call saying, like, hey, there's a spot open for you. So I was really fortunate. I know people who auditioned like 30, 40 times, but I'm in the rare height range that they really need. Like I said, if you're taller than 6'2" and shorter than 5 foot, like you have the deck stacked in your advantage. Whereas like
I,
people who are
I
like
have
5'5",
no
five
deck
six,
stacked. I'm
yeah,
5'11".
yeah.
Are there any characters
Yeah,
5'11"?
So 5'11. So cool. One really fun thing I can say about Disney is that you get measured and then like your height is literally like you have your partner number at Disney, which is your most important number. In entertainment, your second most important number is your height. So I was measured at 75 inches when I first started. So 75. So if character friends topped out at like 74, 74 and a half, I can't beat them because I'm too tall. Because I want to, keep people similar. But there have been instances where like they'll measure you up or measure you down because like half an inch, what's a big deal? So if you could get to five, yeah, 5'11 starts if you want to be House of Goofy. I'm trying to think. 73 inches, yeah.
Oh,
So
House of
maybe
Goofy. Goofy's fun.
baby Goofy because he's
Baby
tiny.
Goofy.
But and that's the
I
funny
can,
thing too is some of
Maybe
these
Max.
characters, yeah, some of these characters have like Goofy has like a 5 inch height range. So like me, like I was 6'4", but they measured me at 75 because once you pass 75, you kind of limit yourself on what you can do. So like there could be, me at 6'3", and you could have someone at 5'10" who got measured into 5'11", and we could be playing out with Goofy on the same day. And Goofy visits the table, he goes checks on Max, and then he's 5 inches taller because he just has better posture, I guess.
Well,
So
he was leaning over the table signing things. That's
he was,
it's
yeah.
it's just how
He has terrible
that's why.
posture.
That's why. Don't look into it.
Strained out his
There's no
spine.
question. Okay, let's see. Well, let's talk about the signature process. Is that a hard process for you?
Oh my God. So yes. So signature process, when you go through training, I want to say it's actually 5 days now, but when I went through training, it was 4 days, and you spend a lot of time learning your VIPs. So your VIPs are Chip, Dale, Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy, Pluto, Goofy, Mickey, the Fab Eight, or I don't think they're called the Fab Eight anymore, but let me start from those. So it's Daisy, Donald, Mickey, Minnie, Chip, Dale, Pluto, Goofy. Yeah, eight. So there's eight of them, and 90% of the performers I'd say would fall into those ranges. So you get a VIP, and that's the one who's in the park a lot. So you spend like a good solid day and a half learning that autograph and perfecting it, like signing it over and over and over and over again. And then your trainers will be like, okay, that's good, or they'll tell you like, it's not so good. So there's actually like a hub in like information center just specifically for character autographs. So like when you're a performer, you can actually look up anyone's autograph, which is pretty cool. Like, then you can just like, I never learned other autographs I didn't need to learn, but like I could learn Princess Aurora's if I wanted to. Like, you commit some serious forgery. But so this is like the craziest thing that I thought was crazy. I thought we would learn every autograph that we could potentially sign, but I just learned that one, and then I learned one other one. I learned Blue, and then it was off into the wild. And then like you could get scheduled. Like my first shift out of training, I was hanging out with Woody, and I was like, oh, how do you sign? Like, I don't know how to sign this. So you like have to look it up and practice it, but you don't have anyone like telling you like, oh, you should fix this, you should fix that. So like Goofy, great, beautiful autograph. Baloo, great, beautiful autograph. And then it was kind of like, good luck. So I would say the coolest thing about hanging out with Chewbacca is that Star Wars characters don't sign because there's no paper in the galaxy. There was paper in episode 8, but that was, the really old Jedi temple. So there's no paper in the galaxy, so they don't sign. Like
Oh, that
signatures
is
are
nice.
just, yeah, they're just in the past. So too much technology. So your Star
Right.
Wars friends do not sign. No, there's a reason why. I mean, I like Chewbacca for a multitude of reasons, but that's one of the many reasons why I like
I'm starting to
Chewbacca.
get the hint as to why we're enjoying the Chewbacca.
Yep.
No, I don't want to get too deep in the
Yeah.
process Disney uses for preparing you for the character roles, as not to ruin some of the magic.
Mhm.
But how long would you say the prep process is before a performer is considered trained and out in front of guests?
Yep. So usually between 4 and 5 days, and then you're off into the wild.
Oh wow,
So
that is
yeah,
faster than I would think. That's
yeah, it is too. You're like, what? Like, because I remember like, how Disney schedules come, like you have like normally 2 weeks in advance. Like I remember a Sunday morning, like, oh, I have my training for characters on Monday, and then I was like, oh, next week I have actual character shifts. Like this is terrifying. And then certain roles like parades are going to take some extra time. Certain characters are going to take a little bit extra time. Like Chewbacca was actually 3 separate days of hanging out
Oh
with
wow.
him before I was on my own. And then like when I did Green Army Man, that was also 3 extra days, just because they're a little bit more complicated. They're not just like your simple VIPs.
Now, you did say that there are some processes a little bit
Mhm.
more enjoyable with the training process. I think you're a little thankful for the training process, though, because it's a little unique for you personally. I want to talk to you because this is an adorable story for those of you who
Yeah.
don't know. You met your now husband while working in entertainment. I love Disney love stories. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about yours.
And it's really funny because like I specifically remember my training with Chewbacca was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And I only say that because Philip, my husband, his days off are normally Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But they really needed him for this training. So they changed his days off, which doesn't really happen very often. Very like interesting that, he's always Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off, except on this random training run. But the stars align. So disclaimer for me, I knew nothing about Star Wars when I was working at Disney. Like I
For
think I saw
shame.
episode 7. Yeah, I think I saw all of them at one time or another as a child, but like it had been like 10, 15 years. So like Phil was my trainer. On my first day, he was asking me Star Wars questions. He's like, where are you at in Star Wars? And I was like, I know Chewbacca and Darth Vader. Like, they're iconic. And then he was like, okay. And he's like, do you know who Han Solo is? And I was like, what? No. And then I was like, but then I was like, oh, but I know who Luke Skywalker is. And he's like, yeah. And then he's like, and then I was like, oh, and Indiana Jones, like Harrison Ford. I was like, he's in Star Wars. And like him and the other trainer were like, oh, yeah, like just really excited that I was gonna connect the dots. And I'm like, oh, like was he Luke Skywalker? And they were just like, no, Robert,
Oh.
no. And then like
I
we
would
had
be
to learn
so
like,
sad to be in that room.
yeah, and like I will say, like, I was I don't normally get stressed out. I wouldn't say I was stressed. I was a little overwhelmed with the Star Wars universe. And like now, like I can only imagine because like at that time they were only on episode 7 and like we had Clone Wars. Now there's so much more. But I just remember like learning all this stuff and there was like Boba Fett and I was like, who's that? And then I was thought I was hilarious, and this is probably my favorite thing that I've ever thought of. I was like, is Boba Fett short for Roberta Fettuccine? And they were like, Robert, no. They were like so annoyed with me. But it worked out because after my training ended, we did not flirt during our training because we were good cast members. Yeah, it was like Tuesday nights, like after I was all done and approved, I got a friend request on Facebook and then we messaged for a bit and then we started dating and then we got engaged and married, but all because of Chewbacca. So like at our wedding cake had like a couple of Millennium Falcons on it. Our like table places were all Star Wars characters. So they got some Star Wars nods. So that's how I met. So thanks to Disney, thanks to Chewbacca. So like I said, Chewbacca holds a special place in my heart
I
for
mean,
many
rightfully so,
reasons.
though.
Yeah.
He is essential to your love story. Like, I would be very personally attached to that character.
I will say the other thing I loved about Chewbacca from like a money standpoint. So Chewbacca has beautiful blue eyes. I have brown eyes. So when you hang out with Chewbacca, he pays for your eye exams and he pays for your contacts. And I normally wear contacts. So Chewbacca saved me a couple $1,000s over the years. If you like wear contacts normally, it's like the best thing in the world because you're like, oh my God, my vision appointments are covered. Like I now have contacts that I can now see. Like I don't have to use my normal everyday contacts as much. If you don't wear contacts and your first experience is having to wear color contacts, because color contacts are a lot thicker than regular ones,
Mhm.
then I feel for you because I know that's not a fun experience.
Another thing that I don't know, some people may call this a fun experience. You and I have talked
Mhm.
about this many times. Um, 2014, the height of Frozen. Uh, I still had the qualifications for main entrance. So I
Yeah.
was working Magic Kingdom, or I'm sorry, not Magic Kingdom, Epcot main entrance. And these guest relations cast members are telling me about the Daddy Dash. And I'm like, what is the Daddy Dash? And they're like, okay, so Epcot main entrance opens at 9 a.m. International Gateway opens at 11 a.m. And that's when they open World Showcase. It's a whole, we open the attractions beforehand, then we open World Showcase at 11. So for those of you, I mean, everyone knows Frozen was just big
Oh,
everywhere. Now you
so
add
big.
that to Disney and it was massive. I mean, Anna and Elsa were averaging 5.5 hour waits at Epcot
Yeah.
at the time. And what was happening was we had the Daddy Dash going on where they would line up at the International Gateway entrance and they would literally, you had dads with kids attached to them. They're like dragging kids and they're running to get to Norway to be first in line to meet Anna and Elsa. And the line just obviously got longer and longer
So
there, but they were
crazy.
running into all sorts of crazy issues with this. Do you ever see anything this wild in terms of like character hype around a particular character?
No, like you, Anna Elsa, like circa late 2013 after the movie came out, early 2014. I don't think any character has ever seen that hype, and I don't think any character ever will. Like, I specifically remember a story. So I was seasonal. It was my first time working Christmas again in Disney. I had like a PM shift. So I went to Epcot because I wanted to meet Anna and Elsa. So like I always really loved like Frozen is probably still one of my favorite Disney movies. I'll have to show you later some of my Frozen artwork I have. But I like specifically remember seeing this little girl dressed in honor Elsa. I remember someone, the nice ops person was like, yeah, it's like a 5 hour wait to meet them. And I was like, no, I was like, they're great, but I'm not waiting 5 hours. Like I have so much more stuff to do. And I remember seeing Mulan, Jasmine, Snow White, Aurora, Belle, like every other princess, Mary Poppins, Alice. And I remember like going back to the line and I saw this little girl in her Elsa dress because everyone loved Elsa. And like, I'm pretty sure she didn't even move in my, like, I was like, oh, I was like, I met like 6 or 7 characters, but it's crazy. Like, when they went to Magic Kingdom in Easter of 2014, and like people would book like CRT, Cinderella's Royal Table, or like Crystal Palace, like these breakfasts, and then skip them so they could be the first in line. And like you have to pay, I think, like $20 per person, but like people would just eat those fees because they'd be like, I need to meet Anna and Elsa. But yeah, Anna and Elsa, I don't think anyone has ever had that much hype. I think because like we'll have like rare characters meet every now and then. So like sometimes like Meg from Hercules will show up, or like I think Shang from like Mulan showed up. So like they'll get a lot of hype, but I think if they were to meet every day, it will never, nothing will ever top
Right.
Anna and
Yeah.
Elsa. Like
Did you ever
never.
hang out with any rare characters?
I feel like I did. Now for some reason I can't remember any. I was with the genie a few times and he doesn't regularly meet, so that makes it pretty exciting. I think when I did Green Army Man, when they first started, so Green Army Man used to not talk, and then when I started doing them, they were a lot more sociable. So they were pretty big for a little bit, but never really anyone like rare to do any like special pop up.
Something I kind of want to talk about too, because there's been
Mhm.
a big recent viral video. It's an old incident, but there was the girl who decided to feel up Gaston.
I saw that.
And
Yeah,
then there's an equally cringy thing that I really don't like of like these TikTokers. A few of them have been awkwardly hitting on some of the princesses. And did you see any like weird, awkward moments you had to shut down as either an attendant or as a
hmm
performer?
I had one time, and I would say this is the only time I would say there's like 2 separate occasions. So one time with Chewbacca, some lady was like, "How big is your Chewbacca do?" And I was like, okay. And
Yeah.
my attendant, so most of the attendants are like younger, people like cast members at Disney in general are like early 20s, mid 20s, or if they're college program ages, maybe they're like 19. But my attendant was like a retired teacher and like it's just gonna be part-time at Disney. So she has something to do 3 days of the week. And she was like, absolutely not. She's like, get out of here to the cast. So like
That's great
it was
though.
just weird. And like
Yeah.
I think, as being like a guy, I think we're fortunate enough that like when people do those type of like weird, creepy things, like we we're not as I'm trying to say, like we're not as like at risk. Like if it was the other way around and it was a man asking like a woman performer that, like I would totally respect if she was like, I need to go home, like I need to get away, like this is overwhelming. Like I would totally respect that. I think for me, I was just like, you're weird, lady. Go away. Go stop drinking. And then another time as Frozone, this with him, like he has padding and so he has a nice butt. And this person kept like grabbing it and smacking it. And I was like, can you not? Like,
I don't I would almost call that like getting kicked out of the park
I was
potential,
like,
because
you need to
that's
go. Like,
yeah.
I was just like, this is a lot. And like again, like I said, like I'm 6'4", so like I'm pretty tall. I think like I think when I never like obviously like ripped off character heads and was like, this is that person in here. But I think people started to realize like, oh, like this is, this is a character, but we have to treat them respectfully. But there's definitely been times like when I've worked, it's unfortunately it's the princess characters who get the, bad end of the stick. Like people just like asking them weird stuff and like, oh, like, so what do you and Prince Eric do? I think it was an Ariel. They're like, what do you and Prince Eric do when you're alone? And she's like, count my gizmos collection. Like, thankfully, I'll say like our performers like are really good at deflecting and like, I don't know, I wouldn't mess with most of them. But I'm the Gaston video was like kind of creepy and like good for him for being like, no, you're done. Like,
Yeah.
it's time for you to go.
And I think
Time to
everyone,
go.
any profession, you kind of have to. I mean, any profession where you deal with the public on a regular basis, you drop the show, and I mean safety. I mean that's the
Yeah.
Disney 4 keys. Safety is obviously the most important. So you can drop the
Yeah,
show in the name of
definitely.
safety. So let's get into talking to you a little bit about some of the changes. Obviously,
Mhm.
Mickey Town Square's theater. You haven't seen him there for a long time, but we're
Yeah.
starting to get some of these character experiences back. So early COVID, we saw a lot of the what I would call extreme social distancing of
Mhm.
Chewbacca's on a rooftop
Yeah.
in Galaxy's Edge, waving down along with Rey. And then we've seen like the character cavalcades of like one float with a couple of characters on it
Mhm.
quickly going, the train station waving down. Now we're getting what is evolved into a somewhat more interactive but more COVID safe esque. I mean, kind of COVID safe.
Yeah.
It's a very gray line. Um, it kind of started with the Oogie Boogie Bash in Disneyland. So we saw the debut of characters like Agatha Harkness, I should specify, from WandaVision, for those of you who aren't
Mhm.
familiar. We saw Sid from Toy Story, Cruella, Evil Queen, um, a few others, and I am blanking on. But some of the newer ways that we're seeing the interactions, they're bringing back a little bit more of a personal touch. You're seeing things
Mhm.
like the characters being roped off to a certain areas, and
Yeah.
there's a considerable distance between them and the guests, but the guests are still able to speak to them. Here's a few clips of that just to show everyone kind of what
Yeah.
character greets look like right now. So these are some that I actually took a few days ago at Disneyland.
Except you. For a special magic wishing apple.
So having looked at those, my question to you is, do you think
Mhm.
this new meet and greet style is the best way that Disney can be doing this in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, I think so. Like, and I think a lot of times, like I said, like having a lot of friends who are still in entertainment, I know a lot of them are disappointed by the lack of entertainment opportunities that we have. But at the end of the day, like it really just all boils down to safety. Like we know COVID is still pretty crazy, like especially, in the state of Florida, and like you have all these people traveling. And so if we went back to like if tomorrow it was your traditional meet and greets where people can stand next to you and hug you and all of that, like it just puts you more at risk. I think it's unfortunate because I think a lot of the cast members are vaccinated and take safety practices in their everyday life. So I totally understand like you want things to go back to how they used to be, but I personally, this is my personal opinion, I don't think things are ever going to go back that way. I know Fairy Tale Hall recently opened up in Town Square Theater, and you can meet them, and it's more socially distanced. But so like I'm glad that we're taking those steps, and I'm hoping that everyone still feels safe. So I think right now in this like post COVID, but Delta variant, COVID's still always kind of lingering around. I think it's the best that we can do. Like, so like, I think to answer your question, I think we're kind of I think at the optimal state that we can be at in respect to safety. Because one thing I have a lot of like crazy stuff that happened at Disney, but I always felt safe at Disney. So I think
Right.
Disney just doesn't like if a COVID outbreak happens in it happens because of character meet and greets, like, and people get like cast members get really sick, like Disney's going to be held liable for that. So they're just trying to cover their bases.
One thing that I did like seeing, especially like at Disneyland, I got to have the big interaction with Evil Queen and Snow White, and it's very different
cool.
to how it was before. Like when I'd go meet, say, Cinderella and Princess Fairy Tale Hall, it would be like, okay, we're gonna go through a little spiel. And so I'm so glad you're here. But ultimately, we knew that we're gonna talk briefly, we're gonna get a picture, and we're gonna move on. Yeah. They're out there on this big set, and they're just constantly getting fed into from the crowd, and the crowd's kind of feeding into each other. Do you think that is good or bad, or you think it makes it harder on them having all of these questions coming from like someone over here, someone over here?
I will say, like, from the performer standpoint, like, I think that's almost kind of more fun because you get to really like be your character and, you know, get to interact with people. And I think it's a nice break because, like I said, like the structure stuff is nice, but when you do it 5-6 days a week for 2-3 years, like you just get burnt out, right? It's the same thing day in, day out. Like, sure, the guests change, but like the questions are always the same. So I think it's really fun to kind of see characters living in their environment. But on the same thing about that, I think so many, like being a captain and being a coordinator and talking to these guests, like some of them just want to like collect pictures and collect autographs. Like, cool, the story's great, but I really just want their picture. Like, I think of like my sister. My sister just wants to fill her autograph book. Like, she thinks it's cool, like when they talk to her, but she's kind of like, just sign my book. So I think there's that segment of guests who like miss getting those like classic pictures. But I think it's fun. Like, if you have like really great performers who like really know their characters and truly love performing, like you get to see some really cool stuff. Like some of my favorite stuff that I did was, you know, roaming with Frozone when like Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl are out there, because we just get to like play off each other's energy. But on the flip side, like there's also been times where it's kind of like just awkward because you're like, these guests just want pictures and my autograph. Like they don't want me to tell them this really cool story. I think about that like with Green Army Man a lot. Like I would tell these really cool, intricate stories that I thought were great, like about adventures that I went on. And they'd be like, can you just sign my book? Because I mean, Disney has it down. Like you have your little pre-show, you greet them, and then you have like a quick little activity, like a little story, an autograph, sign it, and then click, okay, done, bye. Like it's the structure. So like, I don't know, I think people love structure. Like I personally love structure, so I miss that. I don't know, I think for first time guests, they're going to struggle with that because they're going to want those pictures and those autographs, and they can't get those. I think for people like us, like who are cast members and who have been to Disney so many times, it's probably pretty cool to see characters live in their environment.
I would agree with that for sure. I mean, especially like the Agatha Harkness videos from Oogie Boogie Bash
so cool.
Gave me so much joy because she is just so snarky and on it, and it's that is. They have a lot of. I loved every single video I saw of Agatha.
And I think too, like from in this like TikTok age that we're living in, like if you were just doing traditional meet and greets, it would almost be like you're interviewing. Like if you met Agatha, like how you met characters in the past, it would just be like, this is me meeting Agatha and like some little banter, but like to really just see the character alive in their own environment, like is so cool.
The live entertainment aspect has kind of evolved with COVID too. We saw that with the socially distanced Beauty and the Beast. Have you seen any of the videos from the Hollywood Studios version?
I did. And like socially distanced Beauty and the Beast. So back when it, like I've seen it now, and then I also saw it when it was like, I think even more distance. Like, I don't think it was actually the Beauty and the Beast show. I think it was just Belle, Beast, and then the Lumiere, Mrs. Potts, all of them. That was like really weird because you're like, they kind of build it as Beauty and the Beast. Like this is back in like 2020. Like I think it was like July to October of 2020. They just had those musicians. But yeah, now watching it, I mean, it's still similar to the same story. Like I think the hardest thing with Disney is like, Disney wants to be like you're meeting these characters from their timeline. Like they don't, like Belle and Beast don't live in a COVID time. So like, and they want to be safe. So like they keep everything socially distanced. But I don't know, part of it just wants to be like, just acknowledge it. Like we have to have a socially distant show because of COVID. Like it's a thing. But I also know like Disney World is where people go to escape. Like like the thing I miss most about Disney, I really don't miss a ton about Disney. Like I loved my time there, but you know, like a book, it's done. But I miss talking to the guests. Like I remember like there's a guest that I met that like told me, he's like, yeah, I found out I had cancer and like I have 6 months to live. So we did a Disney trip and we planned it in less than a month and we're here. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah. I mean,
that's,
that,
you
and
know, like,
especially you as a performer probably saw a lot of the Make-A-Wish kids.
oh my God, yeah, Make-A-Wish. Ooh, there was, I can tell you, like, this is probably up there with like my favorite stories. So there was, I want to say she was a Make-A-Wish kid and she was cancer free and like every like still had to do like I think monthly checkups with the doctor and she'd come and see Chewbacca like every month. So this is like spanning like almost a year and a half of my time and like kind of my attendant and I kind of got in contact with them. So we were really fortunate. We got to see them like every single month. And then like you'd be like, oh, like I'm 4 months cancer free, like I'm 5 months cancer free. And you're just like, this is so cool. Like I get to kind of like we get to have a picture and like she would give me the picture the next time she would see me. So I have a lot of like cool memorabilia. And then like it was like 2 months passed, like 3 months passed. And I was like, oh, like I haven't seen them in a while. Like, and so I reached out and I was like, hey, like when are you guys coming to visit? Like Chewbacca really wants to see you. And they're like, oh, well, I won't say her name, but they were like, insert name, like it actually came back and she passed away. But
Oh,
she
so
talked
that's so
about
hard.
Chewbacca and meeting Chewbacca and like how it was because they would, you know, like go to the doctor and then you're good and then go meet Chewbacca. And she's like, she loved meeting you. Like, thank you so much. And so like that was like, oh, you know, stabbed in the heart. So, but those are the things I miss about Disney. Like I can be very like skeptical and like sometimes of Disney and like I think Disney at the end of the day is a business, but those things that happen, like those stories that I have, like that's not going to happen anywhere else.
I don't think there's really any aspect where you can get into of that you were a part of the magic there. I mean, there's no other real word to put it. I mean, those are the last cherished memories of that little girl. You know, you got to be a part of those memories, and I think that's exactly what Disney is about. That's exactly why we're doing these Confessions of an Ex cast member thing, to talk about the magic that people experienced and why it's important. And I don't think there's any question that I can ask that can top that experience. So I think we should probably close out with that. Robert, obviously great talking to you as always. Thank you for going through the new COVID changes with me and for reminiscing about all of these wonderful experiences, just getting to be a part of that magic. And I'm glad that you got to be a part of that magic, and that's a wonderful story for you to share.
Yeah, I love the story. I don't even think like Philip knows that story. I always keep it close to my heart, but it's you know, it's a story that if people like, I had like one coworker at a former job and she was like, what's like the most like magical thing that happened to you? And I told them that, and then I was like, it's just like, I don't know, to have a type of impact is really cool. Like I always say like, I was like, because people always ask me like, oh, like wouldn't you want to be a performer again? I would do it for Make-A-Wish. If there was like a Make-A-Wish event or a Give Kids the World event, like I would put on a costume for them and be really sweaty. But
you can actually volunteer down there. They do the pirate princess parties and stuff like that, and there's so not necessarily a Disney character, but they do have their own characters. And there's always Mayor Clayton.
Oh, Mayor Clayton.
I don't know how tall Mayor Clayton is over there.
Let's see. Ironically, at my current job with GM is really big with volunteering, which is cool. And like it's cool to get involved in the community. There was an event and they had no one sign up for it. And it said, be a costumed character and hug kids. So I signed up because I was like, and that you had to write like, why would you be a good fit for it? And so I was like, here's my resume.